Picture this. You're a diplomat carrying a message between two empires, and suddenly your head becomes the reply. That's exactly what happened when someone decided insulting Genghis Khan's diplomats was a brilliant idea. What followed became one of history's most catastrophic military campaigns, all because of something essentially pointless. Back in the early 1200s, Genghis Khan actually had a peaceful relationship with the Khwarezmian Empire. They'd even tag-teamed against common enemies. Everything seemed fine until a Mongol trade caravan wandered into Khwarezmian territory, where a local governor thought, "Free stuff," and proceeded to rob them blind and murder the merchants. Now here's where things get interesting. Instead of immediately unleashing hell, Genghis Khan tried diplomacy first. He sent ambassadors to the Shah of Khwarezm asking for justice and punishment of the governor. Pretty reasonable, right? Well, the Shah apparently missed that day in diplomacy 101. His response? Kill one of the Mongol envoys and send his severed head back with the survivors as a lovely parting gift. Bad move. Terrible move. In Mongol culture, harming messengers wasn't just rude, it was declaring war with a capital W. Genghis Khan's response was swift and merciless. A massive invasion that obliterated entire cities and completely erased the Khwarezmian Empire from existence. Conservative estimates put the death toll in the millions, but wait, there's more. The Mongols didn't stop there. They kept rolling west, devastating Persia, chunks of the Middle East, and even pushing into Europe. Here's the kicker. At the time, the Mongols were busy fighting in China. By murdering that ambassador, the Shah might have accidentally triggered one of humanity's most destructive military campaigns. Fast forward to March 1941, and meet German U-110. Its debut mission was less than stellar, damaged a couple Allied ships before having to limp home after a gun accident injured crew members. But mission number 2? That's where things got spicy. After sinking several Allied vessels in the North Atlantic during April and May 1941, U-110 found itself being hunted by British warships. On May 9, 1941, depth charges forced the submarine to surface, part of what the British later dubbed Operation Primrose. Picture the scene: Allied ships surrounding a damaged U-boat. The British initially opened fire, expecting a fight, but stopped when they realized the Germans were surrendering. The German commander, Fritz Julius Lemp, saw his submarine wasn't sinking as designed. In a desperate attempt to prevent disaster, he tried swimming back to destroy their Enigma machine, the encryption device Nazi Germany used for secret military communications. He vanished in the attempt. Nobody knows exactly how he died. Meanwhile, British sailors were having a field day aboard the abandoned U-110, recovering not just the Enigma machine but valuable codebooks too. This gave British codebreakers at Bletchley Park a massive advantage in cracking secret German naval messages, particularly something called the reserve hand cipher. To maintain their secret, the British let U-110 sink and pretended everything went down with the ship. Speaking of trust issues, let us talk about Constantine V's little problem in 774. The Byzantine emperor had launched a military campaign against Bulgaria that failed spectacularly. However, he had one ace up his sleeve. Spies embedded deep within the Bulgarian court at Pliska were feeding him valuable intelligence. Bulgarian ruler Telerik started noticing something fishy. Constantine always seemed to know his plans in advance. Eventually it dawned on him, his government was crawling with Byzantine agents. Telerik devised a brilliant counterplan. Or maybe Constantine was just incredibly gullible. Telerik sent a message to Constantine claiming he wanted to defect to Constantinople and join his side. He requested the names of the emperor's agents, supposedly to ensure their safety during his escape. Constantine, apparently lacking any suspicious bone in his body, handed over the complete list. Plot twist: Telerik had zero intention of defecting. The moment he got those names, he executed every single Byzantine spy in his court, completely demolishing Constantine's intelligence network in one surgical strike. Jump ahead to November 1989 and witness how one word can topple a wall. Gunter Schabowski had recently become the unofficial spokesperson for East Germany's ruling Politburo, the Communist Party's top decision-making body. The government had just discussed easing travel restrictions to West Germany, but they weren't ready to announce it yet. At a press conference, Schabowski brought up this sensitive topic despite it being confidential. When a journalist asked when these new travel rules would take effect, Schabowski shuffled through his papers, couldn't find an answer, and blurted out, "As far as I know, immediately." That single word changed everything. East Berliners, believing the border had opened for the first time in 28 years, rushed toward the Berlin Wall. Crowds gathered rapidly, and border guards found themselves utterly confused. They had no clear orders but had heard the press conference too. Not knowing what else to do, they opened the gates and let people through. What followed was pure celebration. People climbing the wall, crossing freely between east and west, hugging and cheering. Around 11:30 p.m. on November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall began its fall. Some say Schabowski simply misunderstood. Others believe he knew exactly what he was doing. Now let's discuss the Four Pests campaign, one of the first major initiatives under Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward. The goal seemed straightforward: eliminate four pest rats, flies, mosquitoes, and sparrows, because they supposedly spread disease or damaged crops. The catastrophic mistake was declaring war on sparrows, particularly the Eurasian tree sparrow, which the government blamed for eating grain. Millions of people across China, including children, received orders to destroy sparrow nests, smash eggs, and bang pots and pans to prevent birds from landing until they died from exhaustion. This campaign, driven by propaganda and Mao's belief that humans must conquer nature, nearly wiped out sparrows in China. Without sparrows to control them, insect and locust populations exploded since there were no birds left to eat them. These insects destroyed crops, worsening China's food shortage dramatically. This ecological disaster, combined with disastrous farming policies and environmental mistakes, helped cause the Great Chinese Famine, which killed tens of millions of people. By 1960, the government quietly abandoned the anti-sparrow campaign and started targeting bedbugs instead. Enter Thomas Midgley Jr., whose fuel invention in 1921 seemed revolutionary. While working at General Motors, Midgley discovered that adding tetrethyl lead, also known as TEL, to gasoline could eliminate engine knocking sounds. Early factories producing TEL witnessed workers suffering hallucinations, mental illness, and death. Despite this, the fuel was heavily promoted and spread worldwide. In the late 1920s, Midgley also helped create Freon, the first chlorofluorocarbon, CFC, used as a safer cooling chemical in refrigerators. It worked brilliantly and later found use in aerosol sprays and inhalers. Many years after Midgley's death, scientists discovered that CFCs were damaging the ozone layer, which protects Earth from harmful UV radiation. This discovery led to worldwide CFC bans. At the time, Midgley's inventions seemed like brilliant solutions to real problems, but both unfortunately caused serious environmental harm. One historian claimed Midgley had more impact on Earth's atmosphere than any other single human being. In 1944, after polio paralyzed him, Midgley invented an elaborate system of pulleys and ropes to help others move him in and out of bed. But the device turned deadly. One day, he became entangled in the ropes and was strangled to death, though some suggest it was suicide. Here is a story that will give you chills. We came seconds away from nuclear World War III, and hardly anyone knows about it. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, the closest the world ever came to nuclear war during the Cold War between the U.S. and Soviet Union, something incredible happened around midnight at a U.S. military base in Duluth. A guard spotted an unknown figure climbing the fence. Given that U.S. military planners believed the Soviet Union might sabotage American bases before launching nuclear attacks, the guard assumed this was exactly that scenario. He fired his weapon and triggered the sabotage alarm, which automatically activated at all nearby military bases. But at Volkfield Base in Wisconsin, there was a wiring mistake. Instead of a regular sabotage alert, the alarm triggered a klaxon siren that ordered fighter jets armed with nuclear weapons to take off immediately. The pilots were on DEFCON 3 high alert, just below full-scale war. They'd been explicitly told there would be no practice drills at that level. So, when they heard the signal, they believed World War III had started and they were being ordered to launch nuclear strikes. by the time someone discovered the mistake, jets were already heading toward the runway. An officer jumped into a car, sped to the runway, and managed to signal the pilots to stop just in time to prevent possible nuclear war, the figure that triggered everything. A bear. If that officer hadn't raced his car to the runway, we might not be here today. In 1452, an engineer and iron founder from the Kingdom of Hungary named Orban offered his services to Byzantine Emperor Constantine. 11. The empire lacked sufficient money and resources to support his work. After being rejected, Orban approached Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II, who was preparing to attack Constantinople. Mehmed recognized the value in Orban's ideas and provided full support. In just 3 months, Orban built a massive cannon called the basilica. It was so enormous that 60 oxen were required to move it. His cannon played a crucial role in the Ottoman siege of Constantinople in 1453. Leading to the fall of the Byzantine Empire, which had lasted over 1,000 years. Consider Kim Jong-nam's bizarre downfall. The oldest son of North Korean leader Kim Jong-il and half-brother of Kim, Jong-un was once expected to inherit leadership of the country. During the late 1990s, he held top positions in the Ministry of Public Security and worked on developing North Korea's IT systems. Everything changed in 2001 when he was caught in Japan, using a fake passport while attempting to visit Tokyo Disneyland. The incident embarrassed North Korea so severely that his father canceled a planned visit to China and began quietly removing Jong-nam from power. Over the following years, he lived mostly in exile, moving between China, Macau, and Southeast Asia. He sometimes gave interviews to foreign media and lived a more open, luxurious lifestyle than the secretive Kim family typically allowed. Intelligence agencies believed he had connections to China and may have worked as a CIA informant. After his younger half-brother Kim Jong-un was chosen as the next leader in 2010, Kim Jong-nam was seen as a potential rival. According to South Korean intelligence, Kim Jong-un issued a standing order for his assassination. Jong-nam survived several assassination attempts and even wrote a letter asking his brother to spare his life. On February 13, 2017, he was assassinated at Kuala Lumpur Airport in Malaysia after 2 women smeared deadly VX nerve agent on his face. The women were arrested but claimed they thought it was a prank for a TV show. Most experts believe Kim Jong-un ordered the killing. While alive, Kim Jong-nam said the real reason he fell from favor was his support for economic reforms and openness ideas he'd picked up while studying in Switzerland. Rome learned a harsh lesson about trust when Publius Quinctilius Varus, a Roman general commanding the new province of Germania, placed his faith in one of his officers, a Germanic noble named Arminius. Arminius had been trained in Rome and served in the Roman army, but he was secretly working to unite Germanic tribes against Roman rule. That summer, as Varus and approximately 15,000 to 20,000 Roman soldiers marched back to their winter base, Arminius informed him about a small local rebellion requiring attention. Varus believed him and led his army into a dense, remote forest where Roman troops became stretched out, slowed by bad weather, and unable to fight in proper formation. Then Arminius sprung his trap. Over several days, Roman legions were ambushed by Germanic warriors who knew the terrain and had prepared hidden defenses. The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest in 09 AD began. Almost the entire Roman force was annihilated, and Varus committed suicide during the battle. The loss was so devastating that Rome abandoned its plans to conquer territory beyond the Rhine River. Emperor Augustus never again pushed for expansion into northern Germany. The legion numbers destroyed in battle were never used again. Many Germanic tribes that would later invade and weaken the Western Roman Empire came from this very region that Rome failed to control after Teutoburg. Before D-Day, German commanders disagreed about where the Allied invasion would occur. Field Marshal Gerhard von Rundstedt believed it would happen at Pas-de-Calais, the closest point between Britain and France with key ports and a direct route into Germany. Erwin Rommel, commanding coastal defenses, also focused on Calais but warned that Allies could land anywhere, including Normandy, where they eventually did land, but not far enough to act as proper mobile reserves as Rundstedt wanted. Neither commander got what they needed. Meanwhile, the Allies launched Operation Fortitude, a deception campaign tricking Germans into believing the real attack would target Calais. Even after Allies landed in Normandy on June 6, 1944, German leaders, including Hitler, thought it might be a distraction. Rommel happened to be visiting his wife for her birthday that day, and other officers were off duty due to bad weather forecasts. Rundstedt requested permission to move reinforcements, but Hitler delayed the decision. By the time counterattack approval came, Allied air forces had already damaged German supply lines and troop movements, and German command structure was collapsing. Despite fierce resistance, Allies secured 5 beachheads on D-Day and brought in over 150,000 troops. On July 17th, Rommel was seriously injured when Allied planes attacked his car. With Rommel out and confusion spreading through German leadership, Germany lost its chance to stop the invasion. In 1867, the Russian Empire sold Alaska to the United States for $7.2 million, about 2 cents per acre. After losing the Crimean War, Russia feared it couldn't defend Alaska in future conflicts, especially against Britain, whose forces were stationed nearby in Canada. Selling the territory to the U.S. seemed like a way to block British expansion. At the time, many Americans mocked the deal as Seward's Folly, named after U.S. Secretary of State William Seward, who led negotiations. They called Alaska a useless frozen wasteland. The purchase gave the U.S. strategic Pacific access and added territory more than twice Texas's size, filled with natural resources like oil and various minerals and metals. When Alexander the Great died in 323 BC, he left behind the largest empire the world had ever seen, but no clear successor. His only direct heir was an unborn child, and his half-brother Aridaeus had serious mental disabilities. Without a stable succession plan, Alexander's top generals, known as the Diadochi, rushed to grab power. What followed was nearly 50 years of brutal conflict called the Wars of the Diadochi. These former allies, who had once helped Alexander conquer lands from Greece to India, turned on each other. They formed shifting alliances, betrayed one another, and fought bloody civil wars to control pieces of the empire. The result was permanent breakup of Alexander's empire into rival kingdoms and decades of warfare across the ancient world. One by one, most royal family members, including his son Alexander IV, were murdered during power struggles. By 281 BC, his empire had fragmented into several major rival kingdoms. The long-term effects were enormous. Alexander's dream of a unified empire connecting East and West died with him. Instead, the split led to centuries of regional conflict and helped pave the way for Rome's rise. All because one of history's greatest conquerors failed to plan for what would happen after his death. Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas because of a major mistake. At the time, many scholars already had pretty accurate ideas about Earth's actual size, thanks to earlier work by thinkers like Eratosthenes. But Columbus rejected those accurate estimates. He wrongly believed Earth was much smaller than it really is and thought Asia stretched much farther east than it does. Based on this incorrect math, Columbus argued that Japan could be reached by sailing west from Europe in just a few weeks. Most experts disagreed and believed the trip would be far too long. Still, the Spanish crown decided to fund the voyage, impressed by his confidence and calculations. Ironically, if Columbus had used correct numbers, the journey would have seemed too long and risky, and he probably never would have set sail. In the end, it was only because of his miscalculation and the surprise presence of American continents that his voyage succeeded. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919 after World War I, placed extremely harsh conditions on Germany that affected the country's future and possibly changed world history's path. The treaty forced Germany to accept full blame for the war, surrender land, drastically reduce its military, and pay enormous reparations to Allied powers. Many Germans felt these demands were unfair and deeply humiliating, especially since they'd expected peace talks to follow U.S. President Wilson's more generous 14 points. British economist John Maynard Keynes called the treaty a Carthaginian peace, meaning it was designed to crush Germany rather than build lasting peace. He warned that harsh financial penalties would hurt both Germany and Europe. In Germany, feelings of injustice were widespread. Millions of ethnic Germans ended up living outside the country's new borders. and the loss of land and military strength fueled anger and nationalism. This frustration helped extremist politics grow, especially during the Great Depression when Adolf Hitler rose to power. While the treaty wasn't the only reason for World War II, its harsh terms and how people remembered them played a significant part in Nazism's rise. The Maginot Line was a massive defensive system that France built along its border with Germany after World War I. It wasn't meant to make France completely safe, but to slow down German attacks, give France time to mobilize its army, and keep future battles away from French soil. The line was constructed in the 1930s, partly because Germany was growing stronger and France could count on help from Britain or the United States. France had fewer young men after World War I and chose a defensive strategy to compensate for its smaller army. The Maginot Line ran from Switzerland to Luxembourg and featured underground bunkers, large guns, and strong fortifications. But it didn't protect the Ardennes forest or the Belgian border very well because those areas were incorrectly considered too difficult for major armies to cross. In 1940, Germany avoided the line by going through Belgium and the Ardennes, surprising the Allies. The parts of the line that were attacked mostly held firm, but it had already been bypassed. After the war, people disagreed about whether the Maginot Line was worthwhile. Operation Barbarossa, launched by Nazi Germany in June 1941, was one of history's worst military misjudgments. It was supposed to be a quick and easy invasion of the Soviet Union, meant to defeat the Red Army in just a few weeks, but instead became World War II's largest and deadliest front. Initially, Germans made huge gains, surrounding and killing or capturing hundreds of thousands of Soviet troops in places like Kiev and Smolensk. By late 1941, they were close to key cities like Leningrad and Moscow, but the invasion began stalling. Cold weather, long supply lines, strong Soviet resistance, and poor planning all slowed German advances. Leningrad wasn't captured but was surrounded instead, leading to a terrible siege that killed over 1 million civilians, mostly from starvation. Near Moscow, German forces got within sight of the Kremlin but were pushed back by a surprise Soviet counterattack, helped by Siberian troops brought in for defense. By 1941's end, Germany had lost over 800,000 soldiers. Barbarossa's failure led Hitler to take direct army control, which often made things worse. As Germany struggled, the Soviet Union started pushing west, retaking territory and eventually gaining control of huge parts of Eastern Europe. What started as a plan to defeat the Soviet Union ended up creating the Eastern Bloc and setting the Cold War stage. More people died on the Eastern Front than in all other World War II battles combined. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand happened on June 28, 1914, in Sarajevo, and the Archduke was killed not because of perfect planning, but because of a mistake. Earlier that day, there had been a failed bomb attack on his motorcade. For safety, drivers were told to change the route, but the message didn't reach them. By accident, the Archduke's car turned onto a side street where one of the would-be assassins, Gavrilo Princip, was standing. Gavrilo was there because after the failed bomb attack, he decided to get some food. The driver tried reversing the car but stalled the engine, giving Princip the perfect opportunity to shoot Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie at close range. That wrong turn led to far more than 2 deaths. It set off a chain reaction. Within weeks, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia,